All righty, and we are live. Good morning, everybody. I'm Joanne Johnson, Executive Director for the Oconee County Chamber of Commerce. Welcome back to today's webinar, our Zoom conference. You guys, I am loving these. I hope that you are as well. Today, I am joined by Dr. Paulette Herbert. She is the psychologist for the Carolina Counseling Professionals Group here in Seneca. They do some amazing work. They see a lot of wonderful people. They're doing a lot of good. And today I have brought her on to share a little bit of information for us regarding anxiety and depression. And let's just kind of see where this conversation goes. Dr. Herbert, thank you so much for coming. I'm really, really thankful and excited that you're here. How are you doing this morning?
I'm good. I just appreciate the opportunity to try to address some of these concerns that so many have right now.
You know, before we set this up, you and I were talking, and anxiety and depression is something that, you know, a lot of people in our country deal with, they struggle with. But right now, more than ever, we're seeing a surge in that. Can you kind of speak just right out of the gate? Let's talk about anxiety and what it is and what it looks like.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. Even before COVID-19, before our tornado, you know, anxiety is one of the most highly diagnosed mental health disorder that we have. And few people get it addressed because they feel like, oh, it's just their natural circumstances, I'll get better. But often they don't. And so what we try to look for is, how does this anxiety, how does the way you feel impact your daily living? Do you have ruminating thoughts? Do you have thoughts that come in your head and you can't get them, no matter what you do, they just continue to resurface? You have difficulty sleeping. You have difficulty just doing your day-to-day normal activities, which might be taking care of your kids. It might be paying your bills. It might be doing any number of things that the anxiety is like, oh, if I write this check out to this bill and then something comes up and I can't cover it, then what am I going to do? Or it could be things that's just internal to your home. So to add something like COVID-19 to that it just ramps up even the most calm person, you know, to have all of these feelings. And so, you know, these times are absolutely difficult, and all aspects of our lives are being affected right now. It's like one day everything changed. You know, it's like one of those times where you're just going along and then the next day it's like, oh my gosh, what happened? And so, you know, we had no time to prepare, you know, so it's the anxiety part of it is, if you've already had it, yes, it makes it worse. If you didn't have it, boy, it certainly can come up on you in a hurry.
And a lot of times it'll come, and people often think that with anxiety that there are triggers. We know that there are things or situations that maybe that people should avoid right now if they can, that are triggers for them. But oftentimes, isn't it true that people will have anxiety and it'll just all of a sudden come like a wave out of nowhere and there was no trigger?
Well, yes, there is always a trigger. It might come.
I don't know.
Yeah. You know, it might come. And so that's when we're working with people who have anxiety, we try to help them to journal when this anxiety happens. Let's just use a panic attack, for instance, because that's probably what a lot of people can identify with who have pre-existing anxiety. We try to say, okay, what were you doing in that moment? What were you thinking in that moment? Trying to go back, and we do some of that back work, you know, what's happened in your lifetime that then when something happens currently, it makes that anxiety flare up. So they might not always know. You look, is your heart racing? Are you dizzy? You know, are you having trouble concentrating? Are you, you know, so often people will get heart palpitations, you know, when they panic and they think they're having a heart attack. They go to the emergency room and they find nothing. It can be that severe. So trying to identify, and to be honest with you, people who really struggle with this often have to just use medication to help them calm themselves down in order to try to do the work of psychologically figuring out what those triggers are and how to avoid them.
Yes, and people who have, you know, prior trauma. So as an example, say somebody has come from an abusive situation many years ago, even where it was a volatile situation, and then they might even be standing there washing the dishes in the sink and a dish breaks. All of a sudden, this panic comes over them because it takes them back to where they were instantly.
Right.
And people just kind of need to be aware of that. If you could say to people who are listening, if they have a loved one who has anxiety and they're watching it escalate right now, instead of saying, hey, just calm down, everything's going to be okay. That's kind of like trying to throw a cat in a bath.
Right.
So, what would you recommend? How can they love on their loved ones best as they're watching them escalate?
So when you look at anxiety, often what is behind anxiety is a lack of power. I feel powerless. I feel, so vulnerable that situation, triggers that level of emotion or that level of psychological distress. So what that person can do is to help them try to do like some reality therapy. It's like, okay, this happened to you. What's the worst that could happen? Often I tell, especially my teenagers who have panic, I say, you know what? You will not die from panic. If you have a panic attack and you feel like you're breathless and you feel like your heart's pounding, guess what? You're okay. So you try to help somebody just breathe through it. You're not going to die. People, it feels so powerful physiologically that you think something is happening. And so when you feel like something's happening, then you think your life is being threatened. And of course, then that escalates the panic. And I try to normalize it. I try to normalize, this is okay. You will be fine. So you just sit with them. You just say, okay, what do you have power over right now? You might distract them. Let's go for a walk. Let's listen to some music. Let's watch a TV show. Distraction helps, many people who have anxiety. So that's what I would say.
Do you recommend, like, you try to find something that you can see and smell and touch in those 5 points?
It depends on where anxiety originated. So, can you use those? Absolutely. But some of that, you have to kind of know the background of that person and kind of have to know what it is what the trauma was in order to best address it.
Perfect. Thank you. We're seeing a huge increase rather in anxiety right now, as well as depression. And we'll move to depression in just a second. But you're talking about anxiety. So the root of that being, feeling like we're out of control, which unfortunately right now, many of us are out of control in all areas of our life. We have people that are out there. They haven't received their unemployment. The loans are not coming through. The grants are not coming through. Some don't have their house anymore. I mean, these are things that are happening to them right now. And so how do we speak to that, to say, everything's going to be okay, and here's how we're going to get through it, and how do we keep that anxiety at bay right now?
Well, first of all, you have to look at the fact that in order to help ourselves emotionally, we have to help ourselves physically. In other words, how can we just calm the body down? How can we just, whether that be to go sit down and read with, it's kind of like that reptilian brain. That reptilian brain is like, gosh, unless I have food and water and shelter, all I'm looking at is, how do I get by? You can't do that executive functioning that you need to rationalize. How do I move forward until you get that reptilian brain in check and say, oh, okay, first I have to make sure that I have my basic needs taken care of. And so trying to calm yourself down to be able to rationally think through. And the thing about stress is that it often propels us into something positive. In other words, if you don't have food, you're going to look at resources. Where can I get food? Who can I contact? Being proactive helps you with that stress, with that anxiety. It is that out of control feeling that makes it so difficult to really manage. So I would say the first thing you do is you just take a deep breath. You just try to get your physical body, because the stress, then if you continue in a biologically state of stress, it begins to affect how your brain processes information. So trying to keep your body calm so that your mind can process and move forward is that first step. And so I'm just trying to, say this is what you do first, and then you begin to say, what is the immediate thing I need to do? Often people have a hard time asking for help. There's so much going on right now. There's a lot more help out there than people realize. And we're not able to really, sometimes say, okay, I'm going to call this church, or I'm going to call that church, or I'm going to call the Department of Social Services. Somehow ameliorating your circumstances help you to begin to feel like you're moving. Keeping a routine, getting up, having a list, the social isolation, especially when you've got to homeschool your children. I mean, that in and of itself is very anxiety producing. So there's so many factors that are happening. It's kind of hard to pinpoint one and say, okay, this is what you need to do first. But I would say that what you need to do first is try to get your body okay and in good spirits, as good as you can, and then try to move forward with something specific.
Absolutely. And we know that, anxiety and depression can go hand in hand. And here we are now, we're on top of all of this. We're isolated, and we have been for a month. So we've got people maybe who have already become depressed, even going into this tornado. They're having anxiety. They're wanting to get out. They don't feel like they should. And maybe some of them are high risk, and they think, well, I'm not going to get out at all right now because I don't want to get this virus. But now we have a tornado on top of it. So this is, the combination of these two is absolutely unprecedented. So, it is. And so now they're depressed and they're also anxious. So depression, let's go into depression. And can you kind of share a little bit about what that looks like? And we know there are various kinds of depression. Can you kind of start off with like just a regular general depression?
Yeah. So so some depressions are situational. Right now, a lot of people are in situational depression. Some depressions are chronic, that you're just kind of, I like to say, you're kind of that Eeyore. Today's not a good day. I'm going to do what I need, So what we're really looking at right now is how do we help with situational depression? Because we know that if we can get through this, the interesting thing about pandemics or anything that comes up like this is people are very resilient. They come out of it. At the end, there's something there. So it's trying to keep that positive look of we're going to get through this. But going back to what you look for, are you getting out of bed? Are you eating? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you bathing? Are you talking to people? Are you still trying to connect with others? These would be the things that would tend to say, okay, if I'm sleeping all day because I can't face my day, or I'm just going to sit and eat all the time, this would be what you'd be looking at is how is it different from your normal day-to-day activities? That would be the first thing, is what's different just in just in how you're doing your day. And we know that that's normal. So part of this is say, what I'm experiencing right now is normal. Fear, frustration, sadness, powerlessness. It's kind of looking in the mirror and saying, I'm okay because I know that I'm going to get through this. I'm okay. So we have to look, what are the thoughts that are going through your head? Are they catastrophic thoughts? And in a pandemic and this tornado, they're pretty catastrophic. So it's like, how do we change? The most popular therapeutic intervention for depression is what we call cognitive behavioral therapy. And what that is you change the cognitions in order to change the behavior. So the first thing you have to look at is, what is the inner dialogue that you're saying to yourself? And how can you change that? How can you change your inner dialogue? So, so what you look at is what can you do different, in saying, okay, I'm not getting up out of bed because I just can't face the day. Well, then that's when you set your alarm clock, or you ask somebody, make sure I get up, make sure I at least
Yes.
get up. And then it's trying to take those negative thoughts and try to put a positive thought in its place, because this won't last forever. This is not forever. This is just for right now.
It's unfortunate too, because I was concerned about maybe some PTSD even before the tornado, and I am more concerned about that now for people, because this is catastrophic, as you said. This is a life-changing event, and what can people kind of look at in regard to their loved one? What should they be on the lookout for? Because we know, where PTSD stems from, and all that, and it's very real. And folks, sometimes when they're depressed or they're having major anxiety, they don't even know really could seek help, or worse than that, they're embarrassed to seek out help, because unfortunately there's a stigma. And when you start throwing around the term, oh, someone has a mental illness, then that maybe has a negative connotation. But this isn't the time for that. This is the time to get help. So what would you say to those folks?
Well, sometimes you have to look at how bad is it? How bad is your functioning? How low is it? And to understand that you're not alone. You feel like it because you're socially isolated right now. Some people are, especially people who have more severe mental health issues, sometimes they're not getting their medicine. They either don't have the money, or they don't have access to their doctors, or they don't have ways of getting it. So then it's kind of like it's double whammy. You're having all this anxiety, and now for whatever reason, financial ones, access, you don't have the medicine that's helped you to have your day-to-day activities. So, what we're seeing now with those who already had, pre-existing mental health issues is a struggle to just stay on their medication. So again, this isn't about this. The more people you talk to, the more you understand that many are struggling with the same thing. I try to reframe it for people who have a hard time asking for help. If someone asks me for help, I feel like it's a gift. I feel like they're giving me that option, that humility to help them. I was at Lowe's a while back, and I was buying these big totes. I had one of these projects I was going to do in my clean out my closet kind of thing. Bought these huge totes, the kind that you fill up and then you can't lift.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have about 4 of them in my cart, and I'm going to check out, and the cashier is trying to work these totes in my basket to get the barcode. And I'm not sure what she's trying to do. I'm trying to help, and she said, she's frustrated with me because I'm helping. And she then says, I have balance problems. This is very difficult. And I looked in her eye, and I said, just tell me how I can help. I'm more than happy. And her eyes welled up. And I recognized that probably when she's struggling to help people check out, people get frustrated with her.
Mm-hmm.
So having someone say, just tell me what you need and I will help, just like brought up all these emotions in her. That was a gift to me. That was a gift that first she was vulnerable enough to say, I have medical problems and I lose balance. And here she is trying to deal with these big, heavy totes. And people get frustrated with her. And she's working, she can't do anything about it. So I try to look at, I think if people understand, there's all sorts of people out there wanting to help. We have to reach out and understand that is a gift and a blessing to us to be able to help you.
It absolutely is. Yeah, be on the lookout for who we can help, because there's a lot of people who won't ask for help, also because they're afraid they won't get any. Maybe they've reached out to people in the past and those needs have gone unmet. So they sometimes learn not to ask anymore. They maybe can't handle any more rejection or any more no's or things like that. So if we can be on the lookout for people who maybe could be struggling or appear to be struggling, and to be Jesus with skin on, really.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I know in the therapeutic environment, when I say, is there anybody that can support you and kind of help you through this? I'll hear, oh, people don't have time to listen, or I don't want to burden them with my problems, or, they're just gonna say, look, I've got bigger things to do. So you're absolutely right. There have been fears of, if I do this, first of all, that means you have to be vulnerable. That's pretty tough. And then you have to be, then you worry, you're right, about the rejection part. But these are different times. These are different times. It was interesting. I was kind of out in the community yesterday, and there's a church that has several locations, and literally people from Spartanburg, from Anderson, from Clemson are all over in Seneca helping with the tornado. And so these aren't these aren't part of the congregation. These are just people out there willing to help. Well, yes, that's for the tornado, but those same people are also out there helping the people who are isolated, helping the people who need some additional resources. Food for one. It's like you can call a church and say, can you just provide food for a day for my family? They'll step up to the plate every time. Kind of like, do what you need to do to take care of yourself and your family, and know that there are people out there that see that as a gift to be able to help.
Absolutely. I appreciate you talking about this. And one thing we didn't talk about is grief. If you don't mind, if we can just kind of touch on that a little bit, because all of these people are grieving right now. They're grieving maybe the loss of their job, the loss of their home, the loss of connection, the loss of being able to meet with their churches physically. So can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, I think the hardest time for somebody is just to give in to those emotions that are just natural to us, to cry, to be sad. Sometimes we feel like we have to be, so stoic. We have to try to manage that grief in a way that doesn't upset other people. It is how do we move forward, and we don't even recognize how we're feeling. So part of it is just to lean in to the way you feel, and know that it's totally normal the way you feel, and that the only way to move past the grief is to process it. And to process it means to be able to talk about it. To process it means to, not because there's any answers, because often there's no answers, but the healing is just the ability to share your feelings, your loss, how your life will change, and that you feel stuck and you don't feel like you can move forward. And that's okay. It's giving people permission to experience all the feelings of any kind of grief or loss, and not feel embarrassed or ashamed by them.
There's really no right or wrong in how we grieve, but we have to trust the process and understand that there's a light at the end of that tunnel, and that it's okay to feel how we feel. And we have to do that. We have to not push that down, because it will eventually come out. So we have to get it out. Dr. Herbert, I appreciate you taking this time to speak with us. I know that everybody appreciates it. We can't see them or hear them right now, but I know they're thinking, gosh, this was great, and how sad and how timely our discussion is this morning. You are with Carolina Counseling Professionals in Seneca. Can you share with everybody your number and your website, please?
Well, if you just Google Carolina Counseling in Seneca, the website will come up. The phone number is 864-973-1359. I did learn this morning we might get power in May. So we're a little struggling. We're in a medical park, and there's other physicians in those practices, and we're all just trying to get our offices up and running right now. But we are answering, we are leaving a voicemail, we're having therapists call. One of the beauty about what's happening is that we're looking at all sorts of ways. Insurance would often not pay for teletherapy. They wouldn't, or they wouldn't pay for other alternative ways to therapy. And now they're saying, we will get the services out there. And that's
is it a possibility to do a conference like this, a video conference where you can see the patient and talk to them?
Oh yeah, we have a HIPAA compliant platform that is super easy. We text, you link on, and we get to see you just like we do now. But they've even expanded it for people who don't have the internet. They're saying they will also cover phone, phone conversations. Before they wouldn't because it's not HIPAA compliant. But right now they're saying, everything's on the table. Get the services there because there are so many mental health needs right now. People need a place to talk. And so,
Absolutely.
and so look at the resources. They are out there. You are not alone. And there's ones that want to help desperately. They just, sometimes they don't know what the path is to do that.
You're reminding me because we do have the chamber in partnership with the school district and Northland Cable, Northland Communication. We've set up hotspots. So we've got some at the Walhalla Pool, the Walhalla City Hall, at Shaver, at Genelette. We have some in Westminster. If you do not have the flyer that indicates all of the hotspots that we've got, please let me know at director@aconychambersc.com. I will be happy to get that information out to you. We have them in all of those 3 cities. And so that's a way. So if someone doesn't have internet, they can just scoot right on up to those parking lots. They don't have to get out of their car, and they can hook up to your system and they can see you. Again, I thank you so much, and I hope that we see you again. As for all of our listeners, please make sure that you reach out, that you get help. If you are out of medication, call someone. If you cannot afford your medication, there are people that can help you. If you are not able to go to your physician's office, as Dr. Herbert has said, there are virtual options. Please make sure that you continue to get the help that you need. And if you are a loved one of someone who suffers with anxiety, depression, or grief, please make sure that you are looking out for these warning symptoms. There is help available. You are loved. We love you. God loves you. We are going to get through this together. We're going to come out stronger on the other side. Dr. Herbert, again, thank you so much for your time. And if anybody needs her, please reach out. She's got the number. We talked about the number a minute ago. If you did not catch that, please, again, email me. I'll be happy to give it to you. And I know that she and her staff are ready and available to help you. God bless you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.